For your first assignment in these color exercises, you are going to be making your own color wheel. This is an exercise that is a pretty, sort of a staple when you're beginning to learn about color, because it just gets you comfortable with blending colors and working with this full range of colors and understanding, kind of how those colors emerge as you're blending and those really subtle transitions. And so we're gonna do two things. We're gonna actually start by making a line of colors, and then we are gonna lay out those colors on the color wheel. Before you get started, I want you to make sure that you have the three primary colors. So let me focus that. Good. So you want to make sure that you have yellow, red, and blue, and you can work with your Conte or with colored pencil. I'm going to be working with Conte today. If you're working with colored pencil, you might be doing a mix of blending and also using hatching and cross hatching to define those color transitions. And so whichever you decide to do, that medium will determine how you're applying either this value and blending or whether you're using line. And so I have yellow, red, and blue Conte here. And then I also have a light 2H pencil. And then I have a wet paper towel and some dry paper towels that I can use to daub my fingers, if because this is going to be kind of messy. And then the dry paper towels I might also use a little bit as I'm blending these colors together. So to get started, I already laid out, so let me talk a little bit about how I made this. So the rectangle I just freehand drew, but you can certainly use a ruler, and what I would actually recommend is just put the ruler on the paper and trace it, and that can be your rectangle. For the color wheel, I used two circular forms. So I used a bowl for this inside circle, and I drew that one. First, and then I used a sieve, which is pretty much unique to my ceramic studio, for the outside circle. And now that I think about it, I drew this one first, and then I drew the bowl second, so that way I could line the bowl up on the inside and make sure that those circles were even. And so I would recommend doing something similar. Maybe you have either a pot or a pan or maybe a Pyrex bowl in your kitchen that you can use for that larger circle, and then maybe just a cereal bowl for the smaller one. And then in terms of establishing those lines, I put a dot in the center, and I just kind of estimated that center. And then I used a ruler to draw these lines. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to draw two lines that will bisect your circle and basically divide it into quarters. So I drew these two lines first, and then you're going to draw four more lines that are going to split the circle up like a pie. And so each of those quarters you'll end up dividing into thirds. So if you imagine 1, 2, 3, that quarter is divided into thirds. And so those lines help divide that circle evenly. If you have a compass, that's also a really useful tool. So you can use your compass to, establish that middle and draw those two circles. And then there are measuring tools so that you can evenly apply dots and then draw lines around the circles. So if you have one of those tools, you can use them. But if not, I would just estimate by, dividing that circle into quarters and then further dividing those segments into equal thirds. And so either way, what you're going to end up with is 12 equally spaced boxes in your circle, and that's going to be our color wheel. To get started though, we are going to work on this rectangle first. And so what I've already done is I've laid out my three primary colors. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to establish those secondary colors, and then as we're blending, those tertiary colors will come out as well. And so to get started, I'm going to go ahead and blend this red, and I'll blend this yellow, and notice how I'm using a different finger to blend, just so that I'm not, because I don't want to get any red here, I don't want to get any yellow here. But then what I can begin to do, just to kind of get it off my finger, is I can blend those two things together in the middle to begin to get that orange. And then to lay down color, one thing that I have always found with any kind of Conte or pastel is that if you use the side of the material, you're gonna lay down color that's a little bit easier to blend. If I use this very edge of the material, then I'm gonna be laying down kind of a thicker line of color that's gonna be a little bit more difficult to blend. And so I'm gonna just go ahead and lay down a really broad, kind of soft amount of color that I'll have an easy time blending. And same thing for the red. I'm just gonna hold it at as much of an angle as possible and lay down a really nice broad amount of color that I'll have an easy time blending. And so that gives us that really nice orange. And then I can begin to carry that orange in both directions. Lay down a little bit more red here, kind of carry that over. Lay down a little more yellow here and kind of let that carry over. And so of course we've got our secondary color here of orange, but then as I'm blending, I'm also creating this tertiary color of this sort of red orange that's, you know, also very pretty. And so what I want you guys to work towards is having kind of a nice spectrum of a transition from those really bold primaries to tertiaries to secondaries. And it's okay if you're getting a little bit messy in this process. You know, like, I don't expect you to have crisp lines around this rectangle when you're done. It's more important that you're doing this blending and really exploring that technique. And I'm actually going to put that towel over here for some easier access. Okay. And you can also use your paper towel for blending, or you can use a blending stump. I haven't posted this video yet, but I'll have a video that'll show you guys how to make a blending stump. And so if you want to use that, you're absolutely welcome to. Okay, and so that's pretty good. There's still kind of a strong line of yellow right there, so I might come back and work on that a little bit, but for now I'm gonna go ahead and dive into the green down here and begin to work on that transition. So, and I'm putting my yellow, my wet and my dry paper towels up here because I'm tired of crossing over my drawing as I'm daubing my hands. Okay, so let's lay down a little bit more yellow here. And of course now I'm laying down some blue, and that's gonna make a really nice warm green. And then as I add more yellow, of course that green becomes kind of a yellowish green. And then as I add more blue on this end, that's going to become much more of an aqua color. And then I can blend this blue to be that nice primary . Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay down just another little line of red here, which really, you know, kind of completes our spectrum. And I can dry my hands first, so kind of blend that and let that begin to kind of peek up into this area. And lay down a little more here. Let that come up, begin to come up into the blue, and then lay that blue over it to get a really lovely purple. And then of course we get all the way down to the bottom here where we're really looking at this like red-violet color, which of course is what transitions back into red. And so this is why we put the colors, you know, in a color wheel. So technically speaking, you know, the quality of light, it's actually this, you know, kind of light spectrum. But we put it on a color wheel so that we can, you know, because those colors really do kind of come full circle back around. Okay. Okay, so I feel pretty good about that. So go ahead and work on this, and then once you get this done, you'll get started on your color wheel.